Well, a good place that is really incredible because it's right next to downtown. Like literally, you could be staying in a downtown skyscraper and then literally walk up into this area is called Forest Park. It's the largest forested park, the largest urban forested park in the United States.
Hello, Lender. Thank you so much for joining us today. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. It's great to be with you.
Oh, man, I must say, I'm so excited because, one, we're going to learn about the whole region. And two, you are the best dressed person that has appeared on the podcast. You have put some time and effort. Look at you. It's like it's a job interview for you. I'm so impressed. Thanks so much for showing up like that.
Well, thank you. I try.
Yeah, you did an excellent job. Okay, so before we begin and travel through the northwest part of USA, I am curious, as well as my guest. I have never met you, and we want to know a bit more about yourself. So, in just a few sentences, just like a couple of minutes or something, tell us, where you're from, what's that passion for knowing things and for traveling, and just tell us about yourself.
Well, my name is Lander Nelson. I'm a 14th generation American from Oregon. I was born on the Oregon coast. I have been to 75 countries around the world, 49 US states, 5 Canadian provinces. That's taken me about a combined 5 years or so of travel. I'm also a graduate of the University of Washington there in Seattle with a degree in international political economy. So that's me.
Wow. Okay, so hold on. You said 49 states, right?
49, every single one but Alaska. It remains my final frontier.
We can combine our efforts because I have been only in Seattle as well, but I've been to Alaska. So if we combine our efforts, we can say we travel all USA.
Yeah, teamwork makes the dream work.
Exactly. So what has stopped you, or why haven't you explored yet Alaska?
Well, I really have no excuse. I'll get there soon enough.
Okay, and what about, so before we go, in depth, what about this traveling? How did you start traveling? 75 countries, that's a lot. And how this happened?
Well, I am from a pretty geographically and culturally isolated region of the world. And so the world has always been so far away from me. And both of my parents had never left the United States. And so I'd always been curious to experience the rest of the world. I'm the type of person who likes to experience things for myself. So I started working for an airline and was able to fly throughout North America for basically free with the airline. And then I just got things rolling from there.
Okay, but when you fly, because I know I have friends that are flight attendants, and then, part of the crew. Usually when you fly, I mean, I don't know, sometimes, I mean, not usually, but sometimes when you fly, you just have overnight and then you move away. I hope you don't count a country as visited if you see the airport, right? You just go and explore something.
Well, actually, most of my foreign trips were when I was not working for the airline. I only went to a couple of countries for free, unfortunately.
Okay. And lastly, which one is your favorite destination from this 75?
From the U.S. states or from
from
the world?
The 75 countries that you have visited.
75 countries? Oh, geez, I'm going to be offending the other 74. I will say that the most just all-encompassing destination that includes just so much that just is so overwhelming that will truly blow your mind. I mean, if you only go abroad once and you really want to experience going abroad, I say India.
Ooh, where did you go in India?
I only spent a couple of months in India. I just went through the southern part of India, so I know the south of India quite well. I haven't been anywhere in the north.
Okay. Well, India is a massive country. You can spend more than 2 months. You can spend a lot of time going there. I have a podcast from Kolkata and from Mumbai, but they're both there on the east and the west part. I don't have any clue what's happening on the west. So if you know any locals from India that are knowledgeable, Send them my way. Okay, so let's start traveling. We're going to be talking about Northwest, which includes Seattle, which includes up north Vancouver, and also includes south from Seattle, which is was it Portland?
Yeah, that's right.
Portland. Okay, so how are you going to, move us around? Where are we starting from? I guess starting from Seattle would be a bad call because it's in the middle. So would you say we're starting from Portland and going up to Vancouver and then see what's on the way, or shall we start from Vancouver up in Canada and then drive or move down to Seattle and eventually Portland?
Yeah, so we're talking about a region called the Northwest. You guys have all heard of the Western U.S., cowboys and Indians and all this. And the Northwest is one of the major cultural regions of the West. The West is, you might say, is kind of roughly divided into three major, well, you can actually really say four major regions. The first is the Prairie, which is right there, which is closest to back east, which is closest to the Midwest and the South, where the forests and the farms are. And then you have the Rocky Mountains, which is like Colorado and Utah. And that's one of the cultural regions of the West. And those are giant mountains, bigger than the European Alps. And then you have the Southwest, which is where a lot of foreign tourists will go to when they come out west. That's Las Vegas, Los Angeles, Albuquerque, Phoenix. It's a lot more Mexican, Hispanic. It's desert, sunshine, very different in geography and culture and economy than the rest of the West. And then you finally have the Northwest, and that's where I'm from, and that's what we're talking about today. And the Northwest is this region of mountains and forests and rivers and lakes. It's very rugged. It's very remote. A lot of it is very uninhabited with very low population densities. And people come here for some of the unique culture, the unique Cascadian culture that can be observed in the major cities in Vancouver, Seattle, and Portland, but also and primarily for the nature, for the mountains and the plains and the coastlines and the islands. And a lot of people will come here and rent a camper or a trailer or a car and just spend 2 or 3 months just driving throughout this region.
When we were talking yesterday we had a chat to see if we can, do this podcast together. Two of the things that struck me when you said, and then in my mind I said, okay, let's do it. So one of them was when you talk to people and they say, oh, I have been to the West, they imagine, Los Angeles. While there is always something more to see than what people imagine. So yeah, avoiding Los Angeles, we're gonna learn something new. And then the other thing was what you said, and I think I'm quoting here, this region has one of the most stunning nature landscapes in the world. Is that what you said?
Oh, yes. Yes, that's correct.
Okay. So these are the two things that grab my attention. And yeah, so just start showing us around. Where are we starting from? Ideally, what I would like to do, actually, let's do it as a trip, like somebody lands in Portland or lands in Vancouver, and then what do you need to do? Do you take a bus? Do you drive to Seattle? Like, if you show us around that way, that would be brilliant.
All right. So the United States and Canada are expensive destinations. This is not a place for broke backpackers. This is not really a place for college students. Unfortunately, you're going to be paying the same prices that you would in Northern Europe. So this is definitely a destination you're going to go to when you have a little bit more time, you're a little bit more comfortable. And it is a far more comfortable destination, right? You go to cheaper countries and what you get, they're less comfortable, but they're also a lot more affordable. So that's more of the type of person that's going to be doing this type of trip. somebody a little bit older, somebody a little bit more settled in their life. And so, and also, this is a trip where you're going to want to take a little bit more time to do. This is a very remote part of the world, and you're going to be most people are going to be flying across an ocean and a continent to get to this part of the world. And so they're going to want to spend a little bit of time. It's kind of like going to Australia and only spending 2 weeks. I mean, you could do that, but you just flew across the world. You just literally spent an entire day flying to do that. So it's kind of going to be a similar situation here. So if you were, let's say we're doing a trip, we're going to do a trip for let's say a couple. You'd probably land at Seattle's International Airport. That's the biggest airport in the region. The one with the most international flights and the cheapest. Vancouver's airport tends to be a bit more expensive. But either one, you'll either be flying into Vancouver or Seattle. And depending on which airport you get into, you're going to want to enjoy the city first. You're going to want to enjoy the people and the culture. You're going to notice that the people, the Americans of Seattle, the people of Vancouver, that they are quite different than the Americans and the other peoples living throughout the rest of the United States and Canada. The culture is quite unique. So, and you experienced this, I'm sure, when you were in Seattle and Alaska as well.
Yeah, it was. I mean, I didn't spend much time in Seattle, but yeah, I would say they're different.
Yes. So, arriving in Seattle or Vancouver, it's incredible for architecture, for urban design. A lot of people are going to enjoy taking the public transit. Both cities have kind of sky trams, have light rail systems that are elevated. They give beautiful views of the city. So you're probably going to want to take around public transit and get these views of the city and walk around the downtowns and walk around the historical areas and really enjoy that architecture. Both cities are built on water. They have deep water ports, deep water Pacific Ocean ports. So ocean going vessels, cruise ships, cargo ports or cargo ships from China can be docking right next to you, even though you don't feel like you're on the coast, but there's ocean water because of these sounds that come into Vancouver and Seattle. And so, there'll be mountains to your right. If you're in Seattle, there'll be giant mountains to your east. And then there'll be some smaller mountains, usually snow covered, over the sound to the west. And then if you're in Vancouver, there'll be giant mountains both to the east and then mostly to the north. And so wherever you are in either city, you're going to be experiencing water, you're going to be experiencing mountains, and you're going to be experiencing beautiful architecture that's quite dense. These are relatively dense cities, despite the rest of the West being totally open. These cities are quite dense because of the unique geography of the area. So it's really, these cities are very nice to walk around and just enjoy for a few days or even a week.
Okay, so basically we are starting from the middle point, something that I wouldn't like to do. But you said that we're gonna be flying to Seattle. Okay, but let's if we land in Seattle, then what do we do? Do we ignore Portland? Do we go to Vancouver and then fly back from there, or what's happening? What would be your suggestion?
Well, so after taking in the city, you'd want to get a car. You'd either want to rent a camper or a trailer or a RV, something that allows you to sleep on the road, to sleep in campgrounds, which is extremely popular in this part of the world. And you're going to want to pick up one of those, or you're going to want to just pick up a car and then stay in, Airbnbs and little motels and roadside inns. Because outside of the city, outside of a very small part of these cities, you're going to have a car. These are giant areas that we're going to be covering. And there is public transit, but it's going to take you many times longer than having a car, and it's going to be quite expensive. So you're not going to save that much money, and your trip's going to be impossible, if not just wildly worse, taking public transit.
All right. Well, to be fair, I thought it's way more the driving time, but Seattle to Portland is just under 3 hours. You can take it under 3 hours, so it's not that bad. I think if you land in Seattle, you can drive 3 hours, spend a few days in Portland, then come back, and then just probably go to Vancouver.
Yeah, that is the kind of the shorts. That's the urban Northwest experience. That's something that somebody could do in a couple of weeks. If you were in this hemisphere and it wasn't such a difficulty to fly out to this part of the world, then you just want to spend a couple of weeks, that would be a good trip. Is you just land in Seattle, spend a few days in Seattle, then go down to Portland, spend a few days in Portland, and then maybe go up to Vancouver, spend a few days in Vancouver, and then come back down and then fly out and then experience the nature along the way. So, maybe spend one night in the mountains in between Vancouver and Seattle, and then maybe a couple of nights in the mountains in between Portland and Seattle, maybe a couple of nights on the coast, and then just keep it here in this little narrow region. That is a very doable 2-3 week trip.
Okay. Do you have any recommendations when you say, why don't you spend a couple of nights in the woods or on the coast? Do you have any recommendations where we can stay?
Well, really, I mean, the answer is everywhere. The beauty is really, truly endless. But I would recommend in between Seattle and Portland, I would recommend checking out the Olympic National Park and the Olympic National Forest, which is just a truly unbelievable. It's a cold weather rainforest, which is quite rare. There's only a few cold weather rainforests in the world. And so that means that basically any month of the year there is rain, it's cold, it's wet. Yes, look at that. I mean, it's truly unbelievable. It's quite, there's only a few places on earth where you can see scenery like this.
Okay, so that's on the way to Vancouver, and do you need to pay for that?
Well, that's in between. That's in between Seattle and Portland. Not directly in between, but it's a detour that's doable.
Okay, so you say stay somewhere there in the area, and then just spend a couple of days in that park.
Yeah. So, for example, this is where Twilight is set. The book series Twilight. Okay. It's set in Forks, Washington, which is at the northwest corner of this park. So, hey, you could stay in Forks, Washington when you're visiting.
Okay, well, good. So we have a place to stay. That's great. Yes. So what about on the coast? Do you have something on the coast?
So the coastline of both Washington and Oregon are incredible. But I would say that the coastline of Oregon is a little better, a little more iconic than the coastline of Washington. So after spending a night in the Olympic National Forest, you might go down along the coast and spend a night in Oregon, on the Oregon coast, before going to Portland. And there's a lot of great places to stay on the Oregon coast. The best places are in Southern Oregon, but that's quite far out of the way. So more realistically, you're probably going to want to stay in Central Oregon or Northern Oregon somewhere. A place like Cannon Beach is probably the most iconic place, I would say.
Cannon Beach. It looks.
Cannon Beach.
Yeah, it looks really nice. This rock in the middle, in a way, reminds me of the Philippines, but just in a way. I don't know if you know which rock I'm talking about, but yeah, it looks like a really nice place to be at.
Yes, it's very beautiful. All of Oregon is very beautiful.
Cannon Beach. Okay, perfect. So what about if we dive slightly a bit more in depth in the cities? Like, would that be something you'll be able to help us with?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. Okay. So what about Seattle? I went to Seattle, as I told you. I saw the Space Needle, and that was basically it. I didn't have much time there. I spent just no more than 2 days. What would you tell us about Seattle? What can we see there?
Wow, so much, so much. I would recommend, of course, just spending a lot of time walking throughout downtown. It is the hilliest downtown of any major city in North America, and it's one of the hilliest cities in the world. Um, so seeing skyscrapers on these very steep cliffs is quite fun to just walk around in. So walk around in downtown, see the iconic Space Needle, like you mentioned, that's next to downtown. Um, and then after checking out downtown, a lot of people like to go to Fremont, which is a neighborhood across the canal, across Lake Union from downtown Seattle. It has really beautiful views of the city in a park called Gas Works Park, which is a former industrial works that was turned into a park and has really beautiful views of the city. And then from there, you can walk over to Fremont, which is a very hip, urban, alternative neighborhood, which is famous for its kind of sculptures and quirky character. For example, you might appreciate this. There is a giant statue of Lenin in this Fremont neighborhood. Let me see if I can get a picture of it.
Hold on. What? Why?
Uh,
Why? What is Lenin doing there?
I know. So the story of it is that a resident of this neighborhood, he was a guy from North Seattle. He was going through, I believe, Ukraine in the fall of the Soviet Union, like 1992. And he saw this statue of Lenin, just kind of in like a random village, I believe. And he thought that it was artistically interesting because there are kind of you can't really see it from this angle, but behind him, kind of around his legs, are fire and Kalashnikovs, kind of artistic looking Kalashnikovs. So yeah, here we go. So that's unique. Usually portrayals of Lenin are him as a just the intellectual statesman and not as a figure of revolutionary violence. And so that's why this guy, he spent like a very significant sum of money to transport this giant statue across the ocean to Seattle, and now it's a beloved fixture of this neighborhood.
Wow, this is crazy. Okay.
Yes.
That was interesting. That was curious. Anything else new that we can see over there?
Yeah. So a lot of people like to go to the Amazon headquarters. Amazon is one of the largest and fastest growing companies in the world.
Yeah.
Soon we're all going to be slaves of Amazon. So Amazon, one of its two cities that it's headquartered in is Seattle, and it owns like a third of downtown. And so a lot of people like to go there to their headquarters to check it out. What's it's kind of famous for is the Amazon. They have these here they are, the spheres. Have you heard of these? They're these biospheres that have little jungles built into them. These are open to the public.
Oh, they're open for the
So,
public, so you can go there and
yes.
just get a coffee.
Yeah, just get a coffee and just enjoy the enjoy your future overlords. Enjoy their little corporate headquarters, I guess.
I see. Okay, okay. What else? What
Well,
else?
another neighborhood that a lot of people like to visit when they're in Seattle is they like to go across Lake Washington, which is a beautiful lake. Um,
How
and
do you
maybe
get
you
it?
could get a boat and go
Okay.
out on the lake if you like. Um, a town a lot of people like to go to across the lake there is called Bellevue, which is very beautiful, very upmarket, upscale. And a lot of people like to go there to wander around town as well. Mostly
Okay.
just for shopping, taking in a coffee, people watching. There's not necessarily so many iconic things over there.
Okay, so basically what you're saying is there are a lot of walking places in Seattle.
Yeah.
Is that what you're saying? Okay, I just want to put out Bellevue and just have a look at it. It's basically um, slightly aside from all the buildings and all these things. There is a, it's a weird combination of nature and buildings together. If that's a correct statement.
Yeah, that is how I would describe all of the cities of the Northwest. A weird combination of city and nature.
It's good because they keep the, they don't cut trees to build more buildings, but they, in a way, probably they still do that, but in a way they preserve the nature as they can, as much as they can.
Yes, they do.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Is there anything more about Seattle? Do you know places which with good food in Seattle?
Well, two places. I'll say one place that I actually like to eat. That's out of downtown. If you eat in downtown, it's going to be quite expensive and quite crowded. So I'll tell a neighborhood that's perhaps a little bit less common for tourists to go to eat at, which is the University District. Next to my alma mater, the University of Washington, is this really beautiful historic neighborhood called the University District. And there are more than 100 locally owned restaurants along this main strip. They call it the Ave, and as well as in neighboring streets. And that's a really cool place to eat. It's especially well known for East Asian and Southeast Asian cuisine, and some South Asian cuisine as well.
Okay, so you wouldn't recommend the place, you would recommend the whole region. Just go to the University District.
Yeah, just hop on the train, go to the University District, and just walk up the Ave, and whatever looks interesting to you, just go in, and you probably won't be disappointed.
Okay, so while we are at that University District, is there anything that you can see over there?
Yeah, well, the university itself is the main attraction there in the University District. And the main place you're going to want to go to get the best view of campus is called Red Square, another communist reference.
What is
This is
happening?
a very politically far left region of the United States. So they call it Red Square. Is it because of the politics? Is it because of the red brick that the square is made of? I don't know.
Is it both?
But yeah.
Is it red brick because of the communism? Like,
Yeah. So it's a very beautiful campus. It has a lot of neoclassical, neo-Gothic structures built, fountains and squares, and there's a lot of. It's one of the largest and most prestigious universities here in North America, and so there's always something weird going on campus. If you go there, you'll see probably dozens of different groups promoting different ideologies, and you'll probably see a protest or two. It's a very active place at all times. So it's a really fun place to walk around. And you'll see a lot of tourists there walking around, taking pictures.
where around the Red Square?
Yeah, around Red Square and the other parts of campus. It's quite a beautiful school. So
It's so interesting how a university is an attraction. I'm I'm blown away.
well, it's like if you go to the UK, a lot of people like to visit the universities of the UK. I would definitely love to walk around many of the campuses of the United Kingdom.
Hmm. Well, to be fair, the only places that come to my mind are Cambridge and Oxford. Um, but they are surrounded by, because the buildings are quite old, and the city, there are a lot of old buildings. Well, this is quite new. I mean, for me actually, it looks a bit strange, or probably because it's not my cup of tea, as they say. But yeah, if they're tourists, if somebody who's listening or watching this, is looking forward to explore University campus of Seattle, apparently that's an option. Okay. Is there anything else you'd like to share about Seattle, or shall we move to the next city?
Oh, I think that probably covers it. If you're in Seattle, I should say one last thing. something that's really cool is grabbing a ferry in downtown and then taking it across the Puget Sound, across Elliott Bay, and going over to Bremerton or Bainbridge and just spending an afternoon walking around, wandering around out there. That's something that's really cool that you can't really do in most cities of the world.
Okay, so is that the ferry you're talking about? If yes, that's quite a big ferry.
Yeah, so the ferry is actually going over ocean. That water is not that's not fresh water, that's not a lake, that is ocean water, that's salt water. So it has to be an ocean going vessel to get across the sound.
I see. I see. Okay, and how much is that ferry? Would you happen to know?
Oh, that's a great question. I believe around $20.
$20. And it moves you. Where did you say it transports you to?
It'll take you to either an island across the way or to a larger city that's on the mainland across the sound.
Okay, but I mean,
both places are very quaint.
Do you need to come back with the ferry again, or?
Oh yes, you
Yeah.
will need to.
Okay, so it's $20 one way or two way?
I believe it's $20 return. I mean, I could look it up right now.
Of course, that's all right. No problem. No problem. It's not a big deal. All right. So let's abandon the ferry and look. If you're with a car, the ferry will take the car as well. So you can straight away continue with the ferry, and they drop you off, and then you continue to, let's say, Portland.
Yeah, you could do that.
Yeah. Here you go. Okay, what about Portland? Okay, Seattle I've been to, as I told you. Not that I know much, but at least I've seen something. Portland, I have no idea what is going on there.
All right. Have you ever heard about Portland? Heard about it in the news before?
I heard about it. Yeah, there's a basketball team.
Yes. Have you heard anything else about it in the news before?
I don't think so. No.
Okay, that's interesting.
I don't listen. I don't watch news. Maybe that's the thing.
Oh, no. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. So in domestic news here in North America, Portland is very famous, not for its basketball team or nature, which is what it might be known for outside of this continent, but it's famous for its far left politics and its political activism. There's always something going on. There's always some giant protest, something going on. Portland has quite a reputation as a place for all. I call it the island of misfit toys, because all of the kind of strange people on the left spectrum of our American culture love to congregate in Portland. And so it creates quite a unique city.
Okay, it's no surprise for me that I haven't heard about it, because you just mentioned the two things I don't follow: politics and news. But I learned something new now. You said island. Is it an island?
Oh, no. I just meant it's kind of a metaphorical island.
Oh,
because it's so different than the area around it.
Okay. Because I saw some water going around on the map behind you, and I thought it's, there is a part of it that it's an island. But yeah, anyway, okay. So apart the politics, what can we do in the city? What can we see?
Well, so visitors in Portland are going to like two main things, which is the nature and how the nature is mixed into the city, and then the culture of the city. Mm-hmm. So going to Portland, the main attraction of Portland, yes, that's just some nature kind of outside of the city. That is a hike in the gorge. I've actually personally done that hike, the one that you just clicked on.
Oh, okay.
Yes, that's the gorge as well. That's about 30 minutes east of Portland. This is a place that you'd have to drive to get to these hiking spots, these overlooks. This is a very famous overlook right there.
What's the name
of that particular overlook?
Yeah.
I'd have to see. It's called Vista House.
Vista House on Columbia River. Yes. Yeah. Okay. So, yep. If you have any other places like that, like any other recommendations for hiking or, trekking, Shoot them.
Well, a good place that is really incredible because it's right next to downtown. Like literally, you could be staying in a downtown skyscraper and then literally walk up into this area is called Forest Park. It's the largest forested park, the largest urban forested park in the United States.
Hold on, say that again. The largest?
Forested urban park in the United States.
Wow. Okay, that's interesting. And that's
so it's just a giant forest right next to the city.
Okay, and that's in Portland.
Yes, it's right next to downtown. So you can see downtown is right there. And then Forest Park is literally just a few blocks to the west of downtown.
Yeah, this is crazy. So crazy that I love it. I love it. Okay. What about some other nature places?
Let's see. Within a short distance of Portland, you could go to Mount Hood. Mount Hood is one of the major mountains of the Cascade Mountains, which is what gives this region its name, Cascadia, is these mountains. So the main mountain by Portland, there's many mountains in this range, but the main mountain by Portland is called Mount Hood. And so Mount Hood is very beautiful. The area around Mount Hood is very beautiful. And it's only a couple-hour drive from the city. So it could be a day trip.
Okay, so is Mount Hood that mountain that you see there, that peak?
Yep, that's it.
That is beautiful peak of a mountain with a lot of snow over there. So this is just next to the city. I mean, basically you see it from the city, can't you?
Yeah, it's about an hour and a half to get to the mountain from the city.
Do you know how high that is?
Yeah, it's 12,000 feet, which is like 3,500 meters.
All right. Okay, it's quite high. Okay, that was great. I mean, we definitely have few options to have a look when it comes to nature around Portland. What about in Portland, inside the city? Do you have any recommendations for there?
So the cool part of Portland, well, there's a lot of cool parts of Portland. Portlanders are very, very defensive of their neighborhoods. I'm sure Portlanders would say all of their neighborhoods are cool. But neighborhoods that are of particular interest, I would say, to a tourist would be downtown, and then the area around Mount Tabor, which is a cool place to visit in the eastern part of the city. But you'll probably spend most of your time in downtown, which is here along the Willamette River. It's quite compact.
Compact. Okay. So
there's a lot of. Go ahead.
Is there an old town in Portland?
So Seattle and Vancouver have more historic architecture than Portland because they became major cities earlier than Portland did. So Seattle and Vancouver are going to be better places for historic architecture, but there is some historic architecture, especially around that pink tower. We call it Big Pink, that you were just showing in one of your images there. That's Portland's Old Town. Unfortunately, though, Portland's Old Town is where they put a lot of services for vagrants and the homeless, and so it's a kind of run-down part of town.
Oh, I see. Okay, so what can we see in Portland then, inside the city? Or we just travel to Portland for the nature?
No, I mean, Old Town is actually quite nice. I should actually say that one of the most famous places to go to in Portland, one of the most famous urban destinations. I don't know why it's famous, but apparently everybody knows about this place. It's called Voodoo Donut. I don't know why this place is so popular, but they just sell a bunch of like weird donuts, and that's right in the center of Portland's Old Town. So you can't go to Portland without visiting Voodoo Donut. So I definitely say go to Old Town, go check out Voodoo Donut. Yep. And you're going to get accosted by a lot of homeless asking you for money. Yep. Because that's where they all are. But hey, you're going to have to brave them because the neighborhood's definitely worth it. It's kind of fun too. And I think Voodoo Donut's next to like an abandoned theater. And yeah, so it's kind of a fun, seedy part of town. It's worth checking out.
Okay, I must say, I'll be honest here. You're not selling the city too much for me. I'm not convinced that I need to go and see the city itself. I mean, just for a shop of donuts, but the nature around it is stunning. So it's definitely worth it to go around and, just this park. The park is fabulous. The park and that the river around it, pictures, nature is really nice. But once again, the city are not really sold to. So I don't know, unless you have something, else to show me in the city, maybe we can move to the next one.
All right, I'll try to sell you on Portland
Okay.
with a couple more things, and we can move on to the next place.
Okay.
Well, I guess this is nature as well. Mount Tabor, which is an urban park of Portland. Okay, this is another nature thing. All right. Well, I won't do Mount Tabor. All right. So how about this? The they call it the living room of Portland. It's called Pioneer Courthouse Square. And this is the downtown of Portland. So this is where this is the main plaza of the city. Mm-hmm. And I'd recommend going to Pioneer Courthouse Square and then going south from there and going to the various park blocks and just checking out the city because there's some really cool architecture. And I'll name one cool thing to check out downtown, which is the Portlandia statue. It is the second largest brass, I believe, or cast bronze statue in the United States after the Statue of Liberty. So, and it's in Portland.
So what is this statue actually? There is a lady with what is this, Triton?
Yes. She is holding a trident. The statue is of, I mean, I have to actually look this up myself. It is based on the design of the Portland City Seal. The Portland City Seal depicts a female figure dressed in classical clothes, holding a trident in her left hand and reaching down with her right. An accompanying plaque includes the official dedication poem, also titled Portlandia.
So is that in a way is the figure of the city?
Yes, you could say that Portlandia is the patron saint, the icon of Portland.
Patron, Portlandia. Okay, I think with that we can go to Vancouver then.
Yes. So Vancouver is right on the border with the U.S. As almost all cities in Canada are. Canada is it's another country, but other than crossing a border and having, it's a different they're a different UN country. They'd have a different UN representative. They have a different government, I guess. Other than that, there's very, very few differences. Most foreigners won't actually even be able to tell the difference between the United States and Canada, especially this part of the United States and Canada. They won't be able to tell the difference between the people, between the cities, between anything. Of course, I'm sure that a few people in Canada might get a little offended with that statement, but hey, it's the truth. What can I say? So Vancouver is the third largest city in Canada. It's the second largest Anglo-Canadian, that's English-speaking Canadian city. And it is, I do believe, the most expensive city in Canada. And that's because of the very limited amount of land on which to build. As you can see, it has a truly spectacular geographic setting. It's located on the delta of the Fraser River as it opens up onto the Pacific Ocean. And it's nearly completely surrounded by mountains, giant mountains, and also by sounds. These aren't sounds, these are inlets. These are what are those? Fjords. Yes, These are fjords. Fjords don't just exist in Norway, they also exist here in North America. There's also a few in South America and New Zealand as well. And there are fjords. There's giant fjords with snow-covered mountains literally right next to Vancouver. So it truly is a beautiful, beautiful city, expensive, but one of the most beautiful cities in the world.
Wow. Okay. Okay. So, going in the city then, the skyline of the city indeed looks, I don't know, it looks like from a movie. One of these Atlantis cities. There is just, the city is in the middle and you have different bridges going to the city. It really looks stunning. So, what can you tell us about this city? What can we see there?
Well, Vancouver is another city where the nature is equally as spectacular as the urban. In many ways, more spectacular. There is literally, you can literally go skiing from Vancouver, from the city. You can take a ski lift from from North Vancouver to a mountain and do skiing. I mean, there's actually numerous mountains that you can ski on that are literally next to Vancouver. Um, there's so much ocean. There is a lot of people will want to take a ferry and go over and visit Victoria, um, which is which is the capital of British Columbia, which is a beautiful, quaint little historical town across the ocean, or well, across the kind of the bay from Vancouver. Um, let's see here. A lot of people will have heard of the city of Whistler, which is a world famous ski resort, which is within a day trip of Vancouver. And this highway, which I believe is called the Sea to Sky Highway, which is one of the most beautiful drives in the entire world.
How do you call?
And you drive along.
How do you call it?
The Sea to Sky Highway.
Okay, you cannot say that it's one of the beautiful. It's the beautiful. What would you say? The most beautiful high road.
One of the most.
Okay, you cannot just say that and continue forward. We have to pay some attention to this thing. So it's the
Sea to Sky Highway.
I mean the name.
Also known as British Columbia Route 99.
I mean the name itself. It's kind of attractive. So basically,
yeah, they chose a good name.
It's a road on the mountains and on the forest that is just on a coastline.
Yes, and it goes to a resort town called Whistler, which is one of the most famous ski resorts in the world. It was actually the host of what was it, the 2010 Winter Olympics?
Yeah.
I do believe. Were there in Vancouver, and they were hosted in Whistler. So a lot of people, a lot of foreign tourists, when they visit Vancouver, will grab their car and drive up and visit Whistler.
Okay, so the Sea to Sky Highway, basically there are a lot of detours that you can, make and just enjoy nature and take some photos.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. What else? Because we're driving a bit away from Vancouver, but what about in the city? In the city.
All right. We'll go into the city. We'll go into the skyscrapers. So actually, as you noticed, you were like, you might notice that the skyscrapers look quite uniform. And that's actually because there's a lot of codes that have all of the skyscrapers of Vancouver looking homogeneous, looking the same, to keep that streamlined, modern, uniform look. So all of the skyscrapers kind of have the same exterior. So everybody loves to go to downtown Vancouver, which is it's almost an island. The city is the downtown is almost an island.
Mm-hmm.
And to the northwest of downtown is this giant series of, a giant park with lots and lots of attractions, famous bridges and lagoons, and it's so much fun. And then right next to, of course, that park is downtown, which is, there's just so much in downtown, very dense, skyscrapers in every direction.
Oh,
So
okay. So what would you say? Just walk around the skyscrapers?
yeah, just it's a place to get food, incredible food from all over the world, especially food from East Asia, particularly from China and Korea. Uh, Sometimes Vancouver is called Hongcouver. It has one of the largest Chinese populations here in North America. So incredible Chinese food, Chinese culture, Chinese architecture, just lots of Chinese stuff, especially Southern Chinese, Pearl River Delta Chinese culture. So a lot of that. There's a lot of martial arts. A lot of very famous martial arts dojos are actually in Vancouver. So that's something that sometimes people like to go to see. But other than that, you're going to see a lot of bars, a lot of nightlife. Um, there's not a lot of places to party in Canada, but this is definitely one of the best places in the entire country to party. Is downtown Vancouver.
Vancouver. This is so funny. Vancouver. I will remember that. Tell me a place where I can see the city from the top.
Oh, that's a good question. So
What about those? One of those skyscrapers should offer that option, right? A 360
well,
panoramic view. No?
yeah, you could go to one of the observation towers. I believe there is a famous observation tower that's pretty. I mean, they're all very expensive though. I can't think of the name. I mean, yeah, if you just Google observation tower Vancouver, I'm sure there'll be many options. And then another option that I would personally do is I would just go to one of the beaches across the little bay here from downtown. And then, oh, yes, that's the famous tower. I forget the name of that tower, but
Well, it says Vancouver Lookout, but
Vancouver Lookout Tower.
yeah.
Is that what it's? Oh, the Harbor Center. Yes, I should have remembered that. Yeah, so that's a famous building. Yeah. Oh, there we go. That's a nice view.
Okay. And then
And
what
if
was
you want
the
one for free, you can just go to one of the little bays, these little beaches on the park across the water. And so, really, there's so many places to get a view of the city. You just go across the water in any direction, and you'll get a great view of the city.
okay. So, but from the beach, you will not be able, I mean, you still see the buildings, but you will not see it from the top in a way.
That's true. That's true.
Okay. So, anything else about this city you would like to share?
Well, if you want to have a grimy Vancouver experience, if you want
I
to go
want.
to the, oh, you don't want to have that.
I want to have it.
Oh,
Tell
you do
us.
want to have
Yeah,
that?
yeah.
Okay, all right, all right. So let's see here. If you want to go to what is it? Which neighborhood is it? It's Hastings Street. Yeah. So if you want to go and see kind of the grittier side of Vancouver, you can start in Gastown, which is quite nice, quite expensive. It's a bar area. You start in Gastown. You have to maybe have some beers in Gastown. Then you go to Japantown, which is originally founded by Japanese immigrants and has a lot of Japanese architecture, very nice. And then you go into, maybe you have a sake, and then you go to the downtown east side, and then things start to get a little bit grimy. And then if you go further from the downtown east side, there's still lots of bars, but it starts to get quite grimy. And so if you want to see the grimiest place in Western Canada, then have a night crawl, have a pub crawl out in East Vancouver. It'll be a lot of fun.
Okay, so okay, it's so interesting because when we did the podcast about Philadelphia, Kayla was telling us, okay, this area better not go there, and this area. I'm like, okay, it's equally important to know where not to go. And when I googled Hastings Street in Vancouver, I'm seeing, I'm seeing some images that people exchanging stuff on the streets. The streets are populated with people sleeping on the streets, clothes everywhere, bottles on the streets as well. It's like a fleet market on the street. People are moving their stuff in shopping carts. I mean, it's really colorful, but I wouldn't be surprised if I don't see any tourists in this area.
Well, the reason I recommend it is because
You see the real
when
side of
I visit,
Vancouver. Is that what you say?
yeah, exactly, exactly. Well, I mean, it's not really the real side. This is obviously a small minority of the population of Vancouver lives in this way, a very, very small minority.
Uh-huh.
But it is important for people to, it's not just important, it's also interesting to be able to see beyond the glittering downtown, beyond all the glitz and glamour of the most expensive city in Vancouver, getting to see that there is also a lot of poverty and
Hmm.
desperation. And also the thing too as well with the Northwest in terms of, kind of maybe when you're back east, when you're in say Philadelphia, avoiding those poor and dangerous neighborhoods that's something that you'd want to do. Whereas out west, especially in the Northwest, there's not nearly as much of the violence and crime associated with kind of poverty and homelessness. And so, for example, I lived in Seattle for a while. I lived in Portland for a while, and so the the beggars out there, the vagrants out there. For example, when I lived in Seattle, my local guy he dressed up like a pirate. He literally had a pirate outfit with a little stuffed parrot sewed onto his shoulder, and he had a sign that said, "R, please give me booty."
Yeah.
And he had a little chest, a little treasure chest. And I kid you not, I would see him going into the Safeway, which is a local grocery store that I would shop at. And they had a little bank built into the Safeway. And I'd see him depositing money into the bank of that grocery store that I was shopping at. So, like out here, the homeless culture is a lot more like secure. It's safe. It's a lot more like eclectic and kind of interesting. So you could go to East Hastings and you're not necessarily going to get like or you're going to go to the Ave of Seattle, which is also a kind of area with a lot of beggars. And it's going to be a lot of desperation and poverty, but it's also going to be a lot of kind of eclectic, poor by choice, bohemian type stuff. So yeah, it's kind of a mix.
All right. So yeah, quite a big of a mix. Indeed, it's quite a bit of a mix because I mean, every city will have rough areas, but it was quite a contrast to see this downtown in the island with the beaches. It looks quite nice, and then quite contrasty. But yeah, as I said, every city, every area has good parts and bad parts. All right. So, is there anything? I think that was very insightful. Is there anything else you would like to add that you think that we missed?
Well, you have to go to North Vancouver. You have to hop on a ferry and just go across the Vancouver Harbor to North Vancouver and just walk around, grab a coffee, grab a meal. It's a really historic, beautiful part of town, and it has really beautiful views of the downtown as well.
Okay. Okay. Perfect. I think we're good with that trip. Is there? Do you have any final words to wrap it up?
Well, just to end, I would say that in addition to going to the cities, and the cities certainly are unique. They are different than other cities that you'll find in the world, absolutely. However, the most unique thing about this part of the world is the nature and is the people who live in the rural areas. And so being able to experience the culture and lifestyle of the small towns and being able to drive through the nature and experience the land, that is really important. And so to anyone who comes out to this region, I say, get a car, because if you just go to Portland, Seattle, and Vancouver, you have not visited the Northwest. You have missed out. So get a car and go to the nature in addition to enjoying the cities.
Okay. And lastly, so when people were saying Wild West, is that the part they mean? Northwest?
Well, I mean, this area is the most urban part of the kind of the Wild West, this region. So it is the most civilized, the least cowboy part of the West by far, but it's still more cowboy than anywhere else outside of this region.
Okay, but
But yeah,
in the past, then which part of the West was considered as the Wild West?
Well, all of this area was originally like the Wild West. I mean, Portland, Seattle, Vancouver, they didn't even exist 120 years ago or so. There was literally no one living there. And so all of it was the Wild West at one point. But now these areas are a little less wild. However, when you drive in between these cities, even between these giant cities, even on the highway between these cities, there's still a huge amount of wild country all around you. So yeah, I'd say that all of it really is the Wild West. You go an hour or two outside of Seattle or Portland or Vancouver, and you're in the Wild West.
So there is still a Wild West. Wasn't just in the past Wild West. It's still going the wildness.
Oh no, the Wild West is still very much there. It's still real.
Okay. Thanks so much for joining us for this episode. Thanks so much for sharing your knowledge. It was a great pleasure. And I wish you a fantastic day.
Absolutely. Have a good one.